guys, it's Nina Lene here, and I am here with a special guest. I am here with Artisha, and let me give you a brief, let's say, overview of who she is to me. This is my aunt, and she's definitely one of my most favorite people in the world. And on this segment, I just want her to introduce her story to you guys because it's very inspirational. It's inspirational to me, especially as a young single mother. And this is definitely the single mother series on the hot seat. So I wanted to bring her on here because her story is very inspirational. And so I'm just going to have her introduce herself a little bit and then we'll get into it.
All right. Well, I'm Artisha Hunter, as Nina said. I've known Nina since before she was thought of. It's funny to see her at this juncture and at this point of her life, as I've seen her grow up as someone hanging out with my kids, and now to see her just as a young lady, a mother, accomplishing so much. I'm so tremendously proud of her and all that she has just tackled and conquered in her life. And so it's just a pleasure to be here. When she asked me to do this, I was really excited because I almost kind of envisioned something like this happening like a few years ago, but more from a generational standpoint of kind of like an older person offering kind of advice and to someone who's younger. But I think it's reciprocal. I think it goes both ways, not just as someone who's older passing something to you, but there's things that I could also learn from you. So it's just a blessing to be here, and I'm just excited about everything God is doing, and that's it.
And I'm excited as well. This is just the first of many that's coming, to the hot seat. And I created the hot seat with Hot Mama because I really wanted to shine more positivity on single women, on marriage, on relationships, single men, single fathers, a lot of singles in general, Christian relationships, courtship, because I see a lack of it on reality TV and social media. We see so much negativity, the sad chick, the sad man, this and that. I'm tired of seeing that. I'm tired of seeing grown women fighting, talking about their husbands and who cheating with who, sleeping with who. I'm tired of seeing that. So I wanted to just sit down with real people and have real conversation and just be transparent. And I think this is definitely something that can help generations above me, generations behind me, my own generation. I think it just can help everyone. So with that, I'm just going to dive right into it. I just want you to tell me your story, starting off as we all know how you became a single mother, but just like when you first became, like how old were you when you had your first child, and how was that journey for you?
So I was 17 when I first had my first child. It was a very interesting time in my life. I had been through a lot of things as just coming up, and I can remember just being very vulnerable at a very vulnerable stage in my life when I met this particular person. I was going through some things in kind of my family structure. I was very, very close to my father, and our relationship was not where it typically had been before. I'm not blaming that as part of like the decisions and the choices that I made, but I think it did impact me being vulnerable and open to looking for love in other places. And so that's just kind of how it opened up. Met someone in high school. We call ourselves, kind of like high school sweethearts or whatever, and just entered into a relationship. I didn't have a lot of guidance in terms of like, I just didn't have a lot of guidance. I was like, my father raised me. I was kind of in some ways raising myself to a certain extent. And so I didn't have anyone to kind of tell me about just kind of the pitfalls and the things to kind of avoid. I was just learning just the hard way. And so I became pregnant with my first. I was actually 16, but I had him when I was 17. And I can remember actually, it was a rough time. I'm just gonna say it was a rough time. I got through it with the support of, my family. I was living with my mother, and that was a whole nother thing. While I was pregnant, I had lived with my father all of my life, But during my pregnancy, I decided to move out, and I moved with my mother. And that was interesting because my mother had moved away when I was around 7 or 8. So just that experience of being pregnant, moving back with my mother after like 10 years, I'm so-called thinking I'm grown. And just the dynamics of that was really interesting. But she did help me. I went back to school. I went to cosmetology school. Was that during that time when I was pregnant with Anthony? No, that's a whole nother time. That's Brianna, which I was pregnant with Brianna at 19, had her at 20, but I was finishing high school with Anthony, and was really determined. And that was God. That was God. I finished I had him 2 weeks, went back to school, finished, was on an honor roll. And so I'm grateful. Something happened in my life that allowed me to persevere and push through. And I attribute it to the support of my parents. At that time, I was not living for God. I had first dedicated my life to the Lord when I was 12. I was in a backslidden state when, I got in that relationship. And so that was my first baby at 17.
Okay. So one of the questions I want to ask, 'cause I know that and I know with myself, a lot of single mothers feel, for me, it was an embarrassment. And I think it was because I was 19 when I first got pregnant, so it was right after my first year of college. I had went to college, went away. I was, I had a good year of college, and I got pregnant at 19 right when I came home. And I grew up in the church all my life. So, and I think it was, I was not embarrassed. You know what, let me take that back. I wasn't embarrassed. I was so mad. I was mad at God, like, okay. Because I didn't lose my virginity until I was 18. So I was like, it's only been a year. I know people who've been out here busted it. I was just like, I was mad. I was like, no, this cannot be me. And then the relationship between me and the father was not healthy at all. Like, and of course he was like, what? And I was just like, I felt so alone. And I was just mad my entire pregnancy. I was just upset. I hated myself for allowing myself to be in that situation. I was just mad. And it wasn't until I had my first son that I started to look at things through a different perspective. I started to gain a different perspective. I started to, start getting closer to God, and, with my relationship with God, I'm like, okay, why did this happen to me? I had to figure out purpose. And I think a lot of young mothers, have to figure out purpose through these things. So when was that for you, where you figure out, even if it was the first pregnancy, second pregnancy, when did you start figuring out a different meaning or purpose? Like, what is it that I'm doing here? Like, what am I doing with my life? Because I know I had to figure that out.
Ooh, you know what? I don't feel like I have a point in time. I feel like it's a journey.
Okay. And
I envy people, and that's not the right word, but people who kind of know their course of action. Like, that wasn't me. The people who are like, oh, I want to be, they're 9 and they're like, I want to be a teacher. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And I had to steer and redirect myself too, because when I had a pregnancy, I did have dreams and aspirations, but I was a very realistic and kind of pessimistic person too. And so some of the things that I aspired, like I had wanted to be an actress. That seemed so far-fetched. I had not known anybody who acted. I just completely threw that out the window. I was like, okay, I have a baby now. This is real life. What can I do now at this point in time to get myself where I need to be? So, purpose didn't probably demonstrate itself to me when I rededicated my life to the Lord, because I was still pretty lost. Like, when I had my baby, I can remember being extremely scared and fearful, because I was really a baby myself. I was really young. And I could just remember just really kind of being lost. And when I rededicated my life to Christ, it's like it was a shift, and I had a better perspective and focus and hope. I had hope. I had a sense of, I felt my aspirations shift. I felt like the things that I wanted in life shift. Like, it was a shift for me. Was I perfect? No. I was far from perfect. I actually, after I rededicated my life to the Lord, I became pregnant again. And that time was so tripped out. It was devastating, but I can remember as soon as I found out, well, for one, here it is. I'm living my life. I'm out here. I'm kind of wilding. I'm doing my thing. You get saved, and because I had been saved when I was younger, I knew what was required in my head, but the spirit man, I was still bound. I was still bound. My flesh was still tied to what it was used to. So I was still kind of messing around with my kid's father and ended up with a second pregnancy. Now, I had rededicated my life. I'd probably been in the church probably almost like a year at that time. And it was a kind of a shock. It was a bit of a scandal. So much so where I had to get before the church and apologize to the church for my pregnancy. It was like,
get it together, church.
yeah, it was really tripped out. However, what was really interesting about it is I really believed that it was for me to do it. I was not bitter. I was not resentful. I just knew that I wanted God and I didn't know where else to go. And through that process, I grew so much. Now, the elders at the church at the time, of the church I went to, they didn't play. They was like, okay, you need to cut it off with that daddy, that baby daddy. Only kind of correspondence you need to have with him is like by phone regarding the baby, and that's it. It was old school, y'all. I had accountability partners. It was deep. Now, I'm not saying that was for everybody to go through. And it was interesting at the time when I got pregnant at the church, someone else had been pregnant. So I'm like, well, we're going to have a slew of women up before the church every other month because they're pregnant. You know, that wasn't realistic. And that wasn't the real.
Because our stories are similar, very similar.
Yeah.
Like my auntie was one of the first people I came to when I got pregnant with my second son, because our stories are so similar. Because after my first pregnancy, it was so unhealthy. I was like, no. I rededicated my life to God and I started living for God. And I slipped back, and because I was still back and forth with my child's father. Like, that was my first relationship, so it was really hard for me. That soul tie is real. It was really hard for me to break from it. Yep. So I ended up getting pregnant again. And at that moment, my life was peace. And as funny as it sounds, I was like, I cut him off. And it was like cold turkey, like, we ain't doing this. I was like, I ain't doing this. Yeah. I was like, I done seen too many people. I was like, we not doing this. So I cut him off. And that second pregnancy was so peaceful. I stopped talking to so many people. I had maybe like 2 or 3 friends at that time that I continued to talk to. Not saying that my other friends were no longer my friends, but at that period, I just needed positivity. I needed people who was gonna uplift me, put me in the right direction. And that pregnancy was just like, oh my God. I was just like, I don't care. You know, I had people saying stuff to me, like someone mentioned how I was a burden on my family. People were saying all type of stuff to me, and I was just like, I don't care. Like, you couldn't tell me anything, because I was so focused, like, God, no, I'm not gonna let this be a determining factor in my journey. It just wasn't. And so I was like, you know what, I just started getting closer to God, and I was like, you know what, and in that process I started to discover more about my purpose. And one thing I wanted to say is, like, what you go through is not for you. It's really for you to get through it and to minister to other people who's going through it, saying, hey, I went through it. And so that's when I was like, okay. I was like, okay, you know, this not going to be easy, because I only had a 2-year-old. He just turned 2. And I was like, okay. But I was so much at peace. I didn't, you know, get back in that state where I was blaming myself and blaming God. I had realized my mistakes. And I learned from it. And I was like, you know what, we're going to move forward. Life keeps going. And so I think that is so important, you know, as for other women out there that's battling with certain things. You get pregnant, or you battling with a heartbreak or a bad decision. You know what? When you decide to do that, you can just move forward. It doesn't have to be this big announcement. It doesn't have to be this big, like, step process, 10 steps, 12 steps. You know, to each his own. But I think, like, for me, it was just like, I'm not doing that no more. And it literally was at that decision, like, boom, now we got blocked. It was like blocked, and I was like, let me just go on with my life. I'll talk to you when I need to, or when that time comes. And that's just how it was. So after you had Brianna, hey Bree, that's my guy. After you had Bree, what was your, you know, next steps? Like, what was your process after that? You was in the church, you had your second baby. So what was going on through that pregnancy till, you know, had her afterwards?
So it's so much controversy. It's not a scandal, but it's a real story. So I rededicated my life. So this is, if we back up a little bit, before I found out I got pregnant, and I am, how can I put this? Not introduced to my husband because I knew my husband, but my husband and I connect and we begin to talk.
Okay.
I was pregnant and did not know with my second baby. So for me, the process in terms of what the mothers did was important, because what it did for me is I had to shut all men out because I needed to focus on me. And because he was like, I found out I was pregnant, I told him, and I was like, look, you can leave. Like I was out, and I had so much peace, just like what you said. It was so tripped out. I can remember when I found out, for a moment, like a minute, I kind of was like, I had this like little panic, and then the peace of God. It was weird. It was almost like although it was like, okay, you fornicated, it was almost like I felt like God just allowed it for whatever reason, for me, like to deal with me, for me to draw closer to him.
Yeah.
But it was just like you said, it was this peace. And I can remember going in and telling my sister, she was like, what? What? Because I kept it on the low. I was dealing with this dude on the low, and that's a whole nother story. How even in proximity, how he literally moved very close to where I was. It was just deep. But she was really shocked, and I can remember being like, yeah, this is what it is. Kind of like what you said. And I was like, yeah, okay. And just kind of like going through the process. But going back to my husband, we had hooked up. And the elders were like, no, you need to cut all that out. And I did. And that's really when I cultivated and got really close to the Lord during that time. I'm so sorry. I had really got close to the Lord during that time. And, Fred and I would talk a little bit on phone because he wanted to kind of like follow, the pregnancy and everything, because we had got, within that month or whatever time we were talking, we had got really close. And I had told him, I was like, if you don't want to be in this, if you want to get out, I have 2 kids. This is going to be 2 kids by the same guy. This is complicated. This is messy. I understand. I was going to be heartbroken, but I understood.
Exactly.
And he stood it out. He was like, I'm here.
Ladies, get y'all Uncle Fred.
He was like, I'm here, which was really a blessing. And during that time, low key, I was on the fence about what decision I was going to make. Like, okay, I'm like, I got 2 kids by this man now. So do I just, do I wait out this pregnancy trial and end up with my husband, Fred, who obviously we've been married for a long time now, or do I go back with the kid's father? And I realized that the first decision, that decision just was not, that wasn't what I wanted. It's not what I wanted. And so, that's kind of what happened up until that point. And it was hard, and I'm sure it was hard on him too. Like, here it is. That had to be hard. And I can remember when I went in labor with my daughter Brianna, Fred was there, and I don't want to say I was confused. I just needed to just like, God, what do you want from me? What do you have for me? And I ended up having her, and long story short, we ended up getting back together after a little while after that. But I was a different person. I was really different after going through that experience. And and what the difference was is I really needed God to be first in my life. Not a man, not that. I needed God to have seat and authority in my life. And that's what happened during that time for me. My relationship just grew with God, and that's what I needed.
So you had 2 pregnancies with the same guy.
Yep.
Got close to God, or in that process, even like after the first pregnancy, you got close to God. Still was messing around, not fully dedicated to God. You had another baby, got completely dedicated. So after you had that, I wanted you to tell how blessed you got by Uncle Fred. Like, you guys end up getting married.
Yep.
And so it's hope out there.
There is is hope.
It's hope. And
ladies.
for me, it's definitely inspiration, because even when I'm like going through, I'm like, okay, I know so many women who have been through this but have found, you know, somebody that came in and took their kids, and they will be featured as well, because I want to give hope. It's hope out there. And so how was that process? And like you said, he was there before. You guys had met a long time ago, but he was there before you had the baby. But how was the process after you had the kids and you guys like dating, getting into marriage eventually?
It was interesting because, you know, I had 2 kids. There was a father that was involved. And we were so young. And I think we were young. We were trying to figure a lot of things out. And I think Fred was trying to figure out his role in his position as stepping in as a father or a stepfather or really a father, because he was there, and what that would be like. What is the relationship with managing, you know, we're so young. She has 2 children. There's another guy. How do we navigate kind of this relationship? And so, but we made it work. We dated for a couple of years. Like I said, we kind of hooked up. It was an incident that was crazy that I did. And he was like, girl, what? And so he ended up helping me out in some areas, and then we started talking again. I'll tell you exactly what happened. So I had the 2 kids. I'm on my way to church. I'm in my car breaks down. This is the time, I didn't have a cell phone, y'all. I don't know, cell phones wasn't, if they were around, they were expensive. And so I ended up literally like hitchhiking a ride with this man, like a random man, like so crazy. And so I get to church, and after church I tell Fred, like, I don't even know where the car was. I don't know if I left the car in the middle or as soon as I got to church. And he was like, so what happened? How did you get here? And he fussed at me so. He was like, what, you did what? You got in the car with those kids with some random man? Are you know? So I was like, yeah.
She had to get to church.
Right. I had to get to church. And so he ended up helping with the car, and then that's kind of how we started talking again. And then, you know, we became engaged, and you know, we dated probably for about two years, and we got married, and we went away to college 3 weeks later with 2 kids.
So I just want to thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story, because, you know, it can definitely help so many other women that was in your position, still may be struggling with certain things. And like for me, it definitely gives me hope. And I think like that's so important, just to have hope, to know that it's not going to always be like this. What you're going through is not, you know, everlasting. It's not gonna last forever. And I think like for me, it's teaching me, just like as I'm going through things, you know, as I was going through school, as I am going through a job, and like dealing with trying to get my finances straight and everything, and just that we really need God.
Yeah.
And you know, if I could be transparent on here, is I was so, like when I got pregnant the second time with Cass, I was so indulged in God. I was like, look, I don't care, I'm getting my relationship right, like, and I was just so at peace. And then right around this time last year, something happened. And I started to drift away. And I started to just lie. I was like, you know what? I'm going out here in the world. And it's not the same. You know, when you stay close to God, your life, not saying that everything is going to be perfect, but you go through it with Him. Instead of being away from Him, when you go through the same things, you're not going through it with Him. You find that, for me, I was finding outlets in men, in weed, and alcohol. As I stated in one of my videos before, I had bottles of wine under my bed. Like I would drink.
We come against that wine under the bed and look under the bed spirit.
Because I'd be like these boys. I need some wine. It would help me go to sleep because I wasn't praying. I wasn't reading my word. So I was drinking wine to go to sleep when I usually pray and be knocked out. But now I'm doing stuff to my body. I'm gaining weight. You doing all this. You out. I'm smoking by myself. Y'all, now when I first started smoking, it would always be with a group. Let's be real. You know, group session with your friends.
Weed was never my thing.
But for me, it was like, it was a group section. You know, everybody got a session. I started doing it by myself. I was like, look, forget y'all. I don't need a group. I was like, that's how bad my stress was getting. I was like, look, I was in the garage. I put the boys in bed. I would smoke. and I would go upstairs and be knocked out. But that I was self-medicating.
Yeah.
I was a God medicating.
Yes,
And I
that's
think
good.
that's the thing. You have to medicate yourself with God.
Yes.
And for me, I'm learning that even now, and I'm just speaking from being real,
Yes.
I had to learn to go to God. And I'm still learning because I'm getting back to that point where I'm focusing on me and my relationship with God. I had recently dealt with some men that ain't right. They wasn't doing nothing for me, nothing to benefit me. And I was like, no, I started to see myself jump back in the cycle. Now I'm talking about recently, y'all. I started to see myself jump back in the cycle that I was in before. I was like, no, I cannot go back. I was like, God, I need you to pull me through. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you have to really go to God, because you can't go to your friends. I mean, you can talk to your friends. You can talk to your mama. You can write your journal. But if you don't go to God, it's not going to work.
Yep.
And I just really wanted to bring somebody on here that has done that, who has stayed with God, you know, and has seen, you know, God has seen her through. Now she was a single mother, but she's married. They end up having 2 more kids.
Yes.
And we're in this beautiful house. I wish I could show y'all, but I can't. And I just wanted to bring some hope.
Yes.
So, like,
Yes.
you know, any single women, any
Yes.
single mothers out there that, you know, it's hope out there. Like, you can definitely have that man of your dreams, the house, the family. Because I definitely want that for my 2 boys. I definitely want, you know, all that. But for me, I'm teaching you have to, only way you're going to do it is with God. Only way is, you know, going with God. And so, you know, Auntie Tisha, but y'all call her Artisha, you can't call her Auntie.
And can I add to that?
Yes.
So, during the time when I was in my 2nd pregnancy, that time, I cannot stress enough how important that time of getting to know God was important. Because it almost set the foundation for my relationship, even with my husband moving forward, that God had to be the center of my life. And God had to bring me, he constantly has to bring me back to that. Whereas now it's second nature that God is the center. But like even initially in my relationship, because I was so broken and because I dealt with so much rejection and so much hurt, I would, even early on in my marriage, look to my husband to fill those spaces that only God can fill. Only God can fill the void in our life. It cannot be, like you said, through alcohol, men, friendships. Those things are good. Those things are extra. But the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all those things will be added unto you. And so I can remember God giving me this scripture, and I had rest assured, because I'm going to tell you, I felt a little guilty having a baby, like out of wedlock, and then getting pregnant again. I'm telling you, when I started dating Fred, I felt a little guilty, because I'm like, Lord, there's women out here who's waited, held out, and I'm now getting this man. I felt a little guilty.
Nice, too good to be
right,
true.
like it's too good to be true, but like, God, why me? But I can remember during those times how I denied myself, and how when I was pregnant, I would be alone with the Lord, and how he would just talk to me, and how I was just like, had this love affair with God, like a love affair, like, yes, like I couldn't wait to just get in the presence of God. And I can remember during that time, God was telling me that he will give me, if you delight yourself in me, I would give you the desires of your heart. And my desire was to be married. It was. And I could just remember that. So I just want to pass that on to your audience. Like Nina said, it's found in Jesus, it's found in God, it's found in relationship, it's found in allowing him to love on you, and for him to kind of help you see your purpose and, you know, why you exist. Because once you do that, you become very protective of what you allow in your space, and who you allow in your space.
Yes.
Once God anchors you in who you are, and you become, you know, I am fearfully and wonderfully made by God. And so you don't take light from people. You know what I mean? It makes you, you know, you're like, hey, I'm
You don't settle.
You don't settle.
And I think that's very important that you said that, because I just mentioned this to my friend today who was leaving church, and I was like, wow. I was like, I've been settling because I haven't been seeing my worth. And when I was pregnant with Cass, I had this affirmation. I would go in the mirror and I'd be like, you are beautiful, you are worthy, you are valued. I would say this every morning because I didn't feel that way about myself. So I would say it until I felt that way. And I was on cloud 10. I mean, you couldn't tell me nothing. I mean, I was pregnant. I had the pregnant nose and everything. I thought I was all that. I'm like, you know, because I kept saying that and I got away from that. And so when I started back dating, I wasn't saying those things. So I started to slip and let stuff slip. And I'm like, no. Now I'm like, no, you can't play me like that.
Right,
so I'm back like, no, I'm not settling. And I think that's so important as women. When you know your value, your worth, you don't settle for mess. You don't settle for second chances.
Yeah.
You won't have to give a man a second chance when you know your worth and you know you stand on your ground. That's so important that you said that, because that's something I'm getting back to, because I let that slip and I'm starting to let little stuff slip and I'm like, no, you're not gonna do me like that. No. And I think that's so important to just know your worth and know, like, in God who you are, because if you really know who you are in God, you will not settle for stuff because you know what He has for you. And I just, I think that's so important. I just want to thank you again for coming on here, because, this just blessed me, just sitting here talking to you about it. Blessed me over again. I know it's going to bless somebody else, and that's what I want. I wanted to bless you guys. And I want to thank you guys for watching. And just stay tuned for this series. We are definitely, I'm highlighting some wonderful former single mothers, because she's not a single mother anymore. So former single mothers that has definitely inspired me. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye, y'all.